Chapter 13 to 15. Konoha Hospital, Tsunade's office. Tsunade reminisced with a bottle of sake about her recent time in Konoha, on the verge of a breakdown. Tsunade returned to Konoha a week ago and a lot of things have happened since then. First of all, she and her teammates were hailed as heroes for keeping Hanzo at bay during the clash of the AIM and Konoha army, leaving AIM's military in quite the precarious state. Tsunade could see the proud smug look of Jiraiya as he eyed big-breasted females with apparent lust as if he was about to choose which pouch is the right one to stick his kunai into. Tsunade found it gross. And they wonder why she never fell for such a gallant figure. Tsunade loved Jiraiya, as a friend. But a lover? She would rather commit seppuku. Oh, she couldn't even remember the number of times Jiraiya asked her to scratch the itch when they were in the field together. Tsunade had her urges too as every self-respecting 20-plus years old woman, but... Jiraiya? Really? Blah. Her status as a kunoichi from the Senju clan made her shielded from receiving seduction missions and she was not about to give her virginity to anyone, much less a pervert who sticks himself to every hole he finds on the road. Unlike the general population of shinobi who are informed that yes, chakra indeed does prevent them from getting a venereal disease, she was one of the best medic nin in Konoha. She knew better. Chakra was not omnipotent. But it was her pride. Most of her academy year classmates already lost their purity years ago. Some of them as young as 12. It was a sad thing but the current reality. Tsunade was pure. She just was not innocent. Not since she plunged a kunai through the throat of a bandit on her first C-rank mission. And she will never regret it. Not for a second. She had to sigh when she spotted that even Orochimaru's lip was twitching upwards at the praise they received. She was disappointed. She thought him smarter. To be honest, this was the first really big achievement for her teammates. Jiraiya is good at spying and sealing and Orochimaru at research and jutsu. Not really something Konoha lacked or something that could bring them fame. This was the first time both orphans of her team were under the limelight since Sarutobi-sensei took them under his care. Her? Not so much. She was Senju. Always praised, coddled, where she went people treated her like a princess. And it was great. Until she was 6. Since then it has become utterly annoying. So, when she came from Suna front after she single-handedly pushed Konoha forces into a victory, and received the praise, Tsunade was apathetic to it. Instead, she remembered all the blood that flowed through her fingers. All the blood of her allies. Those she couldn't save. Sad sight but the current reality indeed. The exact same thing as she was experiencing now. What, heroes? What, held Hanzo long enough to win? She was not a stupid idiot. She saw the man completely fine after the fight with them and their summons. He let them go and even gave them a disparaging title for it. Yet, her teammates took it as praise. Idiots. They couldn't even notice when they were being mocked. Tsunade didn't even want to count how many times she had to use her experimental technique, creation rebirth, and how much life force she was forced to use. Tears streamed down her cheeks every time she realized that one fight cost her 50 years of her life. 50 years in exchange for saving her teammates and herself from a continuous lethal dose of salamander poison. No matter how she pleaded, her teammates refused to retreat. Were Jiraiya and Orochimaru even worth it? Jiraiya took 30 and Orochimaru took at least 12 years from her. Her body was freaking 70. Only her medical transformation and the vitality of Senju kept her looking the same or her performance from dropping. Nobody even realized. Sensei was too busy being Hokage. Orochimaru had his research and wanted recognition. He was already on a mission with her brother. And Jiraiya, he didn't care. He would soon leave again to AIM in order to train 3 orphans. The idiot thought he finally found his chosen one. Oh, why does he have to sound so much like Orochimaru when he starts to talk about finding a prophesied little boy? Tsunade quietly sobbed into her arms, as the bottle fell onto the ground, spilling the contents. Unknown to the Sannin, their breakup was set in stone in the exact battle they received the title from Hanzo. Their medic was forced to do too much for the team. Too much sacrifice to keep two childish idiots alive. Neither Jiraiya or Orochimaru were yet the fabled incredible Sannin from canon. Tsunade just couldn't. 50 years. She was well aware of what that meant for her. It meant Nawaki was the only one who could restore the Senju clan. She never cared for it. But this was one blow too many for Tsunade. Orochimaru may be a poison expert, but he was completely out of his league when it came to rare salamander's poison. She only had to use 8 years of her life to keep herself alive through the poison thanks to her medical expertise and various drugs in her system. 42 years were squandered through Katsuyu to a white-haired idiot who cared only about fucking whores and to a research-addicted just a crazed smug bastard. Not even a single meaningless thank you. Tsunade was a realist. And the reality was, Hanzo could single-handedly fuck up the entirety of Konoha force. Tsunade really doubted even the god of shinobi, Hiruzen Sarutobi, would come out of that fight alive. Hanzo was indeed a ninja from the generation of her grandfather. It showed, alright. He could make a bloody smear out of the Konoha shinobi force and wouldn't even need to approach. His poison was better than anything Suna could ever come up with. It's just, he found it more amusing to play with the pupils of the current god of shinobi. They did not fight a war with IWA in aim. They were allowed to fight a war with IWA in aim. A very distinct difference. Tsunade only hoped Amigakure didn't join the fight. She had enough of meeting Hanzo for one lifetime. She would most likely not survive another. Tsunade snorted when she realized she was a 70-years-old virgin. It actually brought quite the humor into the entire situation. Her eyes trailed to Nawaki's photo and a charming smile spread through her face. As long as Nawaki survives, the clan can still go on. I am not needed anymore. She sadly noted but was happy it was that way. No forced marriage to recreate the Senju clan. No political schemes. No, she was now supposed to live her remaining life in the hospital, helping the village. She chuckled as she remembered that discussion with her sensei. Telling the man she was now physically older than him. Both had to get drunk under the table. Hiruzen because she was apparently his first choice as successor, and Tsunade because she just didn't want to have a mental breakdown in front of her sensei. Tsunade of course tore him a new one. Spending her life in the hospital. Ha! As if. Tsunade remembered the spike of nature energy. Yes. She flipped through the books of her grandfather and was surprised when the sage arts, the thing Jiraiya was so enamored with, were a chakra-diluted form of raw nature energy. Tsunade deeply desired the war to end so she could use her new privileges as one of the Sannin, and retire due to old age, and start looking for the source of that spike. Her very own adventure. She didn't even know what for. She only knew, her instincts, her heart deeply longed for anything that was produced by that spike of energy. Illogical, but it was the first and truest feeling she held after her love for her brother. It was precious. Tsunade played with a bottle of sake, her head lying on the table, half drunk as she did kissy faces at the photo of her cute lil' bro. Suddenly the door flew wide. Tsunade! Jiraiya shrieked. What Jiraiya? Tsunade screamed in annoyance. He was the very last idiot she wanted to see this fine alcohol-filled evening. I won't go on a date with you. Now go. Jiraiya quieted down, his face serious. Tsunade blinked as a really bad feeling sneaked into her heart. Tsunade, I am sorry, it's Nawaki. Tsunade palled to ghost white and didn't even wait for him to finish, she rushed out of the room. Her heart, breaking. Tsunade rushed through the hospital, heedless of the shrieking doctors or nurses, her mind focused only on her destination. The place where her brother was. She burst through the door and stopped in her tracks, her wide eyes wavering. Tears started pouring down as her wobbly steps finally reached the charred remains of her brother. She looked at the still body. And the completely intact necklace of her grandfather. She could only stare in shock at it, her mind blank. Orochimaru looked at his completely distraught teammate and couldn't help but to feel bad. It should have been a simple mission. He shouldn't have even been the leader. He was only a casual observer. But, they just had to be ambushed. The stupid Senju boy just had to get out of sight when he was admiring the other boy, the skill of the other boy in the team, and walk onto an exploding tag. As he watched what remained of the Senju clan, Orochimaru yet again couldn't help but ponder about his mortality. He knew the kid shouted about his dreams everywhere he went. But, he ended up as a corpse. Will I have the same fate? Somehow, that thought frightened him out of his wits. Tsunade, I am sorry. It was a trap. He stopped himself as he saw Tsunade completely non-responding with a horror-filled expression. She needed time. Orochimaru sadly nodded and left. His disgust for Konoha's higher-ups increased. It was they who sent them there for a common reconnaissance. Even going as far as saying it was a completely safe thing. That they already checked with ANBU and are sending 3 genins, 1 Senju, 1 Uchiha, and 1 Kurama, and him right under the ambush of 5 Jonin. This could have severely hurt his chances of becoming the Hokage. He sensed something smelly and it was not Jiraiya for once. The funeral was a quick affair. Tsunade was used to those. She attended a few every year. Her clan was now, only her. A shudder ran through her body. Only her. Only a woman who is utterly unable to recreate it. Only, God. The Senju clan is dead. A traitorous thought started to fill her mind. She mostly wondered why was Nawaki personally requested for that mission right after she talked with her sensei about her inability to have children. Why wasn't the last fertile Senju kept inside the village? Why? But she waved them away. Her sensei would never. Stupid girl, she admonished herself. These days, she completely disregarded the hospital. All she had to do was sign off the dead at the end of the day. The dead that could survive if she could bring herself to look them over. But, she didn't care. She spent her days sitting in front of Nawaki's grave. Pondering, what to do. In the end, it was all meaningless. Her life was meaningless. Then her eyes brightened as she remembered the energy spike. She promised to Nawaki. She promised him she will look forward and fulfill her own dreams. With a broken smile and hitched sobs, Tsunade decided. She will find out what caused the spike and she will find out why she was so drawn to it. Nawaki would want her to live. To fulfill her dreams. The sadness in her mind cleared and she started to look forward. A new determination filling her. Tsunade suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder and barely restrained herself from killing whoever dared to touch her. Are you fine? Tsunade jerked her head toward the voice and found a light blue-haired man. Dan. She murmured, making the man astonished that she remembered him. What the heck is this annoyance doing here? He is stalking me again. Geez. Trying to approach me when I am at my lowest? Tsunade frowned. Canon Tsunade would be moved that someone cared. But then again, Canon Tsunade was emotionally so down she literally wouldn't mind dying. This Tsunade, however, had a goal. Determination to live. The man was trying to get closer to her for 2 years straight. She would understand if he had a crush but he didn't. As a medic she could see his body reactions. Tsunade really didn't know what the man wanted from her. I am fine. She politely smiled, albeit a tad bit too forcefully for her taste. Ah, okay. Dan didn't think he would find her like this. Hokage told him to approach Tsunade and make sure she is feeling fine. He fancied himself a somewhat smart man and knew the underlying meaning of these words. If he got closer to her and got the support of the head of the Senju clan, meaning Tsunade, becoming a Hokage would be easier than ever. Hiruzen really wanted to desperately give someone the hat. Dan resisted the urge to chuckle in order to appear compassionate. What about? He tried to start a conversation. Tsunade stood up, ignoring him, and brushed past him before he could even finish the sentence. Dan could only look at her leaving back with his cold gaze as a loud colorful curse left his mouth, making the nearby grandmas look at him threateningly while raising their garden hose. Did I approach too abruptly? He asked himself quietly. Fuck. The bitch. 2 years and she still doesn't give me even a second of her time. The flowers in his hand were violently thrown onto the ground as he ruffled his hair in annoyance. If I ever get her, I am going to fuck her silly until she won't be able to think about anything else than me. Dan calmed down as he stomped onto the flowers for a few times from the sheer frustration he felt. The worst part is that I really do start to like her. He sighed with a bitter grimace as he calmed down. I would probably desperately fall in love with her with enough time. Hiruzen, you sly fox. Dan muttered and shook his head as he decided to pay his respect to the deceased since he is already at the cemetery. Tsunade marched on into the Senju compound and entered the library. Her library. It all now solely belonged to her. She had money. She had knowledge. She had privileges. She lacked only family. They were all dead. Sigh. Now, if only the war ended and she could leave this hellhole of sad memories and self-imposed bastards who would never give money to save lives. Oh, she understood that Hiruzen-sensei was not to blame. Even though it was him who always rejected her medic per team proposal. It was the elders who always whispered into his ear. The trusted elders that were Hiruzen-sensei's teammates. The same greedy bastards that would rather people die than their pocket change to suffer. The same people he trusted more than his own pupils. Tsunade was fed up. Fed up with politics. Fed up with funerals. Fed up with Konoha. She wanted to leave and she will leave. She will find what caused the spike that is filling her mind and she will die happy, taking the Senju clan with her to an early grave. That was the plan. Nodding to herself, she approached the shelves. Now, let me see. Nature energy, nature energy. She browsed through the books, looking for anything even remotely helpful for her future endeavors. Sigh. If only I didn't take Shizen Kato as my apprentice. She mumbled, not even realizing that Dan was also called Kato. Ah, screw it. That girl can form medical chakra as 6 years old. I can take her with me when I leave and then deposit her back in Konoha after her training is finished. Tsunade ruffled her hair and with her decision was made. A year passed since Rei and Conan found their Mokutan ability. They both decided to abuse the shit out of it and spam trees whenever possible. Whenever they were sure that nobody watched. This also made them evade any and all towns or villages as they entered the Aim Mountains and didn't leave them for the entire year. It was a very quiet area. Nothing important. Nothing really advantageous. The shinobi didn't come here. They encountered one lone Kyumo spy, but Rei and Conan made the spy meet his maker swiftly. Surprisingly, the loot was quite good. Most of their time was spent on affinity training though. As Rei thought, this tree spamming made them unconsciously better at water and earth affinity. They didn't know the exercises for the affinities other than the one with the paper, so they trained what they found hard. Both Conan and Rei could float a boulder while sitting on it for 3 hours until their chakra depleted. This was what they found hardest when it came to earth affinity. They had to continuously mold earth chakra and supply the boulder with it to make it float through gravity. Rei started to seriously suspect that Inoki was not floating himself but the specks of dust on the soles of his feet and in his clothes that pushed him up. Or maybe he just used his rock-hard brain for it. Who knows? This exercise though. They could not do it with smaller rocks while sitting on them yet. Nor with something bigger and heavier than an adult human. That would take an enormous amount of chakra from them. They still needed more practice. More perfection. As for water release. They focused on the feeling of water in the atmosphere. Both Conan and Rei could even feel the water in the clouds. But pulling it out of them? Meh. Thankfully in Aim no Kuni water was supplied very frequently. Their first exercise that took them 3 whole months was all about standing in the rain and making sure the droplets evade them. They simply had to stay dry. Which was a freaking chore when you are walking in a downpour. They had to always supply water chakra and coat themselves with it. It was like a human-shaped makeshift umbrella or aura around them. It was completely invisible, but it worked. When they were both sure they could stay dry even under a waterfall, they tried something more challenging. They tried to pull water out of the surroundings. Easy, right? They were in a country where water always fell from the sky. But no. They tried to pull the water in the surroundings and add it to the clouds. It was a backbreaker, but their improved mid-Chunin reserves barely managed it. It was more about water chakra control anyway than the amount of their chakra. This made sure there was always a downpour in their location. But no worries, they had their umbrella no jutsu. The downpour was not the result. Only a step. When they finally managed to make a downpour, they had to stop it. Make the rain in their location stop. Keep it in the clouds. Both Rei and Conan felt as if the heavens were pushing onto them during that exercise. The rain wanted to pour down onto the earth, but they held. They held insane amounts of water in the sky. Until the clouds started to get charged with lightning, and instead of downpour, a lightning storm started. Rei used this for his lightning chakra training, as he made sure to try and use his right ton chakra to redirect the lightning strikes where he wanted to. Mostly on the trees Conan was creating. She became incredibly proficient in it. No wonder though. Conan found a new cheat for herself. Rei was quite fed up with her Kekii Tota when he found out. It was yet another bullshit in his opinion. Conan could change the tree into slices of paper. They didn't even need to be made by Mokutan. Just Mokutan chakra supplied to a very normal tree and bam. One tree could be changed to thousands of slices of paper. The best part? The chakra used for that was actually minimal if she raised the tree herself via Mokutan. Conan now had always thousands of papers soaked in her chakra. She just had to grow them from the ground. Rei vowed he would train hard when he saw it. Fortunately, his water manipulation was a hell of a lot better than Conan's. As for earth, they were about the same. Rei always added nature chakra into the water, increasing its volume and density. His chakra nature manipulation was leaps and bounds above Conan. Where she could potentially create a house-sized ball of water in 10 minutes. Rei could create an entire lake in 5. And then there was his lightning affinity. Hee. Zap Zazup. Their biggest problem was, they still had no jutsu, so they could not compare what they could do with actual ninjas. Rei found a few kenjutsu scrolls on the poor Kyumo lad and he trained with his chikudo. Conan just shrugged them off and said her futon paper is enough for cutting power. But they both knew she was kinda behind in her futon. By now it was more effective to maul her enemies with doton hardened paper than cut them with futon enhanced paper. The damned paper was hard as steel. If she stacked enough, she could even block her futon enhanced paper, and that was telling something since these could literally fly through 3 trees and then make a hole through a half of a boulder. Hell, the thickness of that paper shield was not even an inch. Yes, maybe they really overdid their doton affinity training a little. Considering they were 10 while their bodies looked 12 years old. Conan was actually able to completely soak up an entire lake with her papers and make them still look as if they didn't even have a drop of water on them. The more her water affinity improved, the more bullshit that aspect of her Kekii Tota became. Rei started to see why it was so rare and people were so amazed by it. Her papers may not have the destructibility of dust release, but the sheer utility. Conan was carrying a lake with her everywhere and it didn't even burden her. When she learns to change her body into paper like her canon counterpart, she will literally have a lake inside of her body and could potentially also harden it to the levels of her doton hardened paper shield that blocked the futon shuriken. Rei shuddered at the future prospects. Rei, on the other hand, could not carry so much water with him. He compensated. He could pull enough water to create a ball of the size of a small house almost instantly. Most of the time it was enough, but he knew it was nowhere near Hashigaki Kisame or the best water users. He also used doton chakra on his clothes to make them harder to penetrate while retaining their flexibility. A trick learned from Conan. But his doton enhanced with nature chakra was much tougher. His kenjutsu with Raiton chakra was getting better and better by the day, and he was even able to use a minuscule amount of nature chakra to make his lightning a shimmering grayish-black. But nevertheless, it was much more powerful than the blue one. He barely controlled it as his lightning affinity was the least trained so far. A pity that his supreme chakra control talent worked perfectly only for regular chakra. In elemental chakra, it helped a whole lot, but it was still far from perfect. Rei was the proudest of his body strength. He left Konan completely in dust in this department. She was still very powerful in taijutsu, but Rei was even more so. The nature chakra he pulled into his body each night enhanced him leaps and bounds, making him faster, stronger, more durable. He was quite sad that Konan was having at most 1/3 of his enhancement since her body was unable to use the nature chakra to its fullest extent. Alas, she just did not have the godly talent for it. Rei was shaping up to be quite the swordsman. It would certainly be helpful when he finally starts senjutsu training. But slowly, their training time ended and they decided they had enough of the mountains. It was time to leave and get some experience, and loot.